Forget what you think you know about the cradle of civilization. Most history books paint pre-Islamic Arabia as a quiet, dusty desert of nomads and camels. They lied to you. This wasn't a peaceful expanse. It was a ruthless, high-stakes arena of blood feuds, corporate greed, and spiritual anarchy. If you stepped into Mecca 1,500 years ago, you'd likely be robbed, sold, or killed before the sun hit its peak. Welcome to the Jahiliyyah, the age of ignorance, where your life was worth less than the dust under a merchant's sandal. Imagine a valley tucked away in the barren mountains of the Hijaz. It's scorched by a sun that feels personal in its hatred. This is Mecca. But don't let the desolation fool you. By the late 6th century, this was the Wall Street of the ancient world. It was a city that didn't grow food, didn't have a river, and didn't have a king. Yet, it held the entire Arabian Peninsula by the throat. The secret to this power? A perfect, toxic blend of religion and capitalism. At the heart of the city stood the Kaaba. Today, it is a focal point of monotheistic prayer for billions, but back then, it was a chaotic pantheon. Inside and around its walls sat 360 idols, one for every day of the lunar year. There was Hubal, the god of the moon and fate, Alat, the goddess of the earth, Al-Uzza, the mighty, and Manet, the goddess of destiny. But these weren't just religious symbols. They were magnets for money. Every year, during the sacred months, a truce was declared across the warring tribes of Arabia. Thousands of pilgrims descended upon Mecca. They didn't just come to pray, they came to spend. This was the Great Fair. The Quraysh, the ruling tribe of Mecca, weren't just priests. They were the ultimate middlemen. They provided water to the pilgrims, charged for protection, and taxed every piece of silk or ounce of incense that changed hands. The blood oaths and the business of war. Wait, you think your modern corporate office is cutthroat? In Mecca, hostile takeover wasn't a metaphor. It was a spear to the chest. The social structure of pre-Islamic Arabia was built on one thing: the tribe. There was no central government, no police, no court of law. If someone from Tribe A killed someone from Tribe B, the only justice was for Tribe B to kill someone from Tribe A. This led to blood feuds that could last for 40 years over something as trivial as a stolen camel or a disputed race. The Quraysh tribe, however, was different. They were masters of diplomacy. Under the leadership of figures like Qusay ibn Kilab, they had consolidated power and turned Mecca into a sanctuary haram. Inside the city limits, violence was strictly forbidden. This wasn't because they were peaceful people. It was because dead customers don't buy spices. They created a free trade zone in the middle of a war-torn desert. The elite of the Quraysh, families like the Umayyads and the Maxim, were the billionaires of their day. They organized massive caravans, the Rilat al-Shita wa al-Sef, the winter and summer caravans. In the winter, they went south to Yemen for spices and perfumes from India. In the summer, they headed north to Gaza and Damascus to trade with the Byzantine Empire, the dark side of the golden sands. But behind the glitter of gold and the scent of expensive frankincense lay a social rot that would make your stomach turn. While the merchant princes grew fat, the poor, the orphans, and the enslaved were treated as disposable tools. One of the most chilling aspects of this era was the practice of female infanticide. In a society that valued warriors above all else, daughters were often seen as a liability, a mouth to feed that couldn't fight, and might bring dishonor if captured in a raid. Some fathers would literally bury their newborn daughters alive in the sand. It wasn't just a rare occurrence. It was a systemic cruelty born of a desperate, hyper-masculine survival culture. And then there was the slavery. This wasn't just labor. It was a total erasure of a human being's rights. Slaves like Bilal ibn Rabah, who would later become a legendary figure in history, were owned by men who viewed them as no different from a piece of leather or a sturdy mule. The rudeness of the Meccan elite wasn't just a personality trait. It was their entire worldview. Might made right. Wealth was proof of divine favor. If you were weak, you deserve your fate. The poets, the rock stars of the desert. If you think rap battles are a modern invention, you haven't heard of the Mu'allaqat. In a world without books, the word was power. Poets were the PR agents and the news anchors of the desert. A great poet could make a tribe famous overnight or ruin their reputation for generations with a single stinging verse. They would gather at the market of Ukase, near Mecca, to compete. The winning poems were written in gold ink and hung on the walls of the Kaaba itself. These poems didn't talk about peace or love in the way we do now. They sang of wine, of slaughtering enemies, of the beauty of their camels, and the endless, lonely nights in the dunes. They celebrated Miruwa, a code of manliness that emphasized bravery in battle, hospitality to guests, only if they were from the right tribes, and unwavering loyalty to the clan, even if the clan was wrong. But even within this hard-edged culture, there were cracks in the foundation. Some individuals, known as the Hanifs, began to look at the 360 idols and the chaotic violence and think, this can't be it. There has to be something more. They rejected the statues and searched for the original monotheism of Abraham. They were the outcasts, the seekers walking through a city that cared only for the ringing of coins and the prestige of ancestors. If you think the corruption stopped at the counting house, you're dead wrong. The elite of Mecca, the Mala, were a prehistoric mafia. They sat in the shade of the Kaaba, in an assembly called the Dar al-Nadwa, deciding whose caravan would pass and whose would be raided. If you weren't part of their inner circle, you weren't just a second-class citizen. You were prey. This was a world where a man's worth was measured by how many sons he could arm and how many poets he could hire to insult his neighbors. But even in this den of greed, a strange, legendary figure emerged who would change the economic landscape forever. Hashim ibn Abd Manaf. He was a great-grandfather of the Prophet, and he was the one who truly weaponized the Meccan economy. He brokered the alaf, the trade pacts. Before Hashim, caravans were frequently looted by desert bandits. Hashim's genius? He gave the nomadic tribes a cut of the profits. He turned the bandits into security guards. This made Mecca the undisputed center of the Silk Road's southern branch. But wealth didn't trickle down. It pooled at the top. The disparity was sickening. While the merchant princes wore fine linens from Egypt and ate from silver platters, the Musta'afun, the oppressed, lived on the scraps of the city. Slavery in Mecca wasn't just about labor. It was a status symbol. The more souls you owned, the higher your izzah, or pride. The year of the elephant, a superpower's failed invasion. You've heard of the 300 Spartans, but have you heard of a man who tried to bring a tank to a sword fight in 570 AD? This is the year tradition says the Prophet was born, but it began with an act of geopolitical aggression that almost erased Mecca from the map. Abraha, the Christian viceroy of Yemen, was furious. He had built a massive, glittering cathedral in Sana'a to divert the lucrative pilgrimage traffic away from the pagan Kaaba. When a disgruntled Arab allegedly defiled his cathedral, Abraha saw his chance. He marched north with a massive army and something the Arabs had never seen in warfare, a war elephant named Mahmud. Visual, a massive war elephant looming over a terrified line of desert cavalry. The Meccans were terrified. They had no standing army, only tribal militias. They retreated to the mountains, leaving the city to its fate. Legend says that Abdul-Muttalib, the grandfather of the Prophet and custodian of the Kaaba, went to Abraham not to beg for the city, but to demand his stolen camels back. When Abraham mocked him for caring about camels instead of his temple, Abdul-Muttalib gave a chilling reply. I am the Lord of the camels, but the house has a Lord who will defend it. What happened next is etched into history and scripture. The elephant, Mahmud, reportedly knelt at the gates of Mecca and refused to move. Then clouds of birds, the Ababil, swarmed the sky, dropping stones that decimated the invading army like a prehistoric airstrike. Abraha's forces retreated in a bloody rout. Mecca was saved, and its prestige skyrocketed. It was now seen as a city protected by God, making its merchants even more untouchable. Surprising secrets of the Jahiliyyah. Here is something the history books usually skip. Pre-Islamic women weren't all oppressed shadows. While the poor suffered, women of high status like Khadija bint Khuwaylid were the CEOs of their time. Khadija was a twice-widowed merchant princess who managed one of the largest caravan networks in the city. She didn't just inherit wealth, she grew it. In a world of brutal patriarchy, she was so powerful that she hired men to do her bidding. Another shocker? The age of ignorance wasn't about a lack of intelligence. It was a lack of moral direction. These people were master genealogists. A Meccan could recite his family tree back 20 generations without breaking a sweat. They were also sophisticated astronomers, using the stars to navigate the trackless, empty quarter with the precision of a modern GPS. They were brilliant, capable, and terrifyingly efficient, but they lacked a soul. Visual, a night sky over the desert with ancient constellations highlighted. The ticking time bomb. By the early 7th century, the tension in Mecca was at a breaking point. The tribal system was failing. The old code of Muruwa chivalry had been replaced by nafsi, every man for himself. The rich were getting richer. The poor were getting desperate, and the idols in the Kaaba were no longer providing the social cohesion they once did. The city was a tinderbox of class warfare and spiritual emptiness. People were tired of the blood feuds. They were tired of the arrogance of the Quraysh elite. They were waiting for something or someone to break the cycle. They didn't know it yet, but in a small cave on the outskirts of the city, on a mountain called Jabal al-Nur, the old world was about to end. The age of ignorance was about to meet the light, and the arrogant merchant princes of Mecca would soon face a revolution they couldn't buy their way out of. The story of pre-Islamic Mecca isn't just a history lesson. It's a warning of what happens when society values profit over people and pride over justice. It was a world of extremes, extreme wealth, extreme cruelty, and extreme poetry. If you want to see how this powder keg finally exploded and changed the map of the world forever, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're diving deep into the rise of the early caliphates in our next video. Like this video if you learned something new, and check out our Rise of Civilizations playlist for more. What do you think was the most shocking part of Meccan life? Let us know in the comments.